Princess Alara stood completely alone on the wide stone balcony of the royal palace, her hands resting lightly on the ornate railing as she looked out over the sprawling city far below. The capital stretched for miles in every direction, a beautiful mix of ancient architecture and modern technology that her people had perfected over thousands of years. She was beautiful by absolutely any measure or standard, tall and graceful with naturally silvery skin that seemed to glow softly in the light of the setting suns. Her hair fell in long waves down her back, each strand looking like spun starlight catching the fading daylight. Her eyes were the deep blue color of Earth's oceans, though she had never seen Earth and never would. But despite her beauty, no one dared come close to her anymore. Not within 10 feet, if they could help it. She was a Velix, a member of one of the oldest and most respected species in the entire galaxy. Her people had been exploring the stars when most other civilizations were still living in caves. Her father ruled an entire star system with wisdom and fairness. The Velix were admired throughout known space. But Alara herself was considered cursed, dangerous, untouchable in the most literal sense. Her skin secreted a natural toxin. It was a defense mechanism that all Velix possessed, evolved millions of years ago when their ancestors had needed protection from predators on their dangerous homeworld. The toxin was harmless to Velix themselves. Velix females were completely immune to it, and Velix males had developed high resistance over countless generations. But males of every other species in the galaxy were not immune, not even slightly resistant. Any male from any other species who touched Alara's bare skin died within minutes, without exception, without mercy. The toxin was simply too powerful, too perfectly designed to kill. It had happened 47 times over the course of Alara's life. 47 different males from different worlds had touched her skin. 47 had died horrible deaths as a direct result. Some had been complete accidents. Young diplomats brushing her hand during formal introductions, not knowing or forgetting the danger. Some had been deliberate attempts by arrogant warriors from various species, who believed the warnings were exaggerated, who thought they were strong enough to resist. Some had been acts of true love, young men who claimed to love her so much they were willing to risk death for just one chance to hold her hand or kiss her lips. All 47 had died in agony. The pattern was always the same. First came violent convulsions as the toxin attacked their nervous systems. Then paralysis as their muscles stopped responding to signals from their brains. Then respiratory failure as their lungs forgot how to breathe. Then death, usually within 5 to 10 minutes of initial contact, every single time, without fail. Now, at 26 years old, Alara lived in complete and utter isolation despite being surrounded by people constantly. Palace guards kept everyone at a safe distance from her at all times, usually at least 10 feet. She wore long gloves made of the finest materials that covered her hands and arms completely. She wore flowing robes that covered every single inch of her skin from neck to toe. She had not felt another person's actual touch in over 10 years, not since she was 16, and the toxin had fully developed in her system. She was quite possibly the loneliest person in the entire galaxy, surrounded by billions of beings but unable to make real contact with any of them. Today, new visitors were scheduled to arrive at the palace for diplomatic meetings. A human delegation. Earth had only recently joined the galactic community after achieving faster-than-light travel just a few years ago. Now they were establishing diplomatic relations with various governments and species across known space. Alara watched from her lonely balcony as the human ships descended from the sky and landed in the palace's massive courtyard far below. 3 ships, sleek and elegant in design, despite being primitive by galactic standards. She felt nothing but deep sadness as she watched. More people arriving to meet her. More people who would be briefed about the danger. More people who would look at her with fear or pity or morbid curiosity. More people who would keep their careful distance. More people who would never truly know her. Down in the courtyard, the head of palace security, Commander Vex, was already meeting with the human visitors as they disembarked from their ships. Vex was a career military officer, serious and professional. He took his responsibility for everyone's safety extremely seriously, especially when it came to protecting visitors from the princess. You must understand something very important before you meet any members of the royal family. Vex said firmly to the group of 6 humans standing before him. His translator device rendered his words into perfect English for them. Princess Alera is deadly to all males of every species we have ever encountered. Her skin produces a natural toxin that has killed every single male who has made direct contact with it. 47 deaths over the years. The humans looked appropriately shocked and concerned by this information. You must keep your distance from her at all times, Vex continued, his tone leaving no room for argument. Do not shake her hand. Do not get physically close to her. Do not touch her under any circumstances. This is not a polite suggestion. This is not optional. This is quite literally a matter of life and death. If you touch her bare skin, you will die. Painfully. There is no cure, no treatment, no antidote, only death. The human ambassador, a man in his early 30s named Tom, nodded seriously as he listened to the warning. We understand completely, Tom said, his voice calm and professional. We'll be extremely careful around the princess. We have no desire to die today. But even as he said the words, Tom felt a pang of sympathy for this princess he had not even met yet. What must it be like to live knowing that your very touch could kill? To be isolated from all physical contact? It sounded like the loneliest existence imaginable. The diplomatic meeting took place in the grand throne room of the royal palace, a massive chamber with soaring ceilings decorated with intricate carvings that told the history of the Velix people over thousands of years. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the polished marble floors. Ambassador Tom represented Earth at the negotiations, along with 2 other human diplomats named Rachel and David who served as his advisors. They were there to discuss potential trade agreements between Earth and the Velix star system, as well as cultural exchange programs that would help both species learn about each other. Princess Alera attended the meeting, as was expected given her position in the royal family. But she did not sit with the other Velix officials at the main negotiating table. Instead, she sat in her designated seat placed far off to the side, separated from everyone else by at least 15 feet of empty space. She wore her usual long gloves made of fine silk that covered her hands and arms up past her elbows. Her flowing robes covered every inch of her body, from her neck down to her feet. Not a single patch of her deadly skin was visible. She sat alone even though the room was filled with dozens of people from multiple species. Guards, advisors, translators, officials, all of them carefully maintaining their distance from her. Tom noticed her immediately when he entered the throne room. It was hard not to notice her, both because of her striking beauty and because of the obvious empty space surrounding her like an invisible barrier. He noticed how she sat completely apart from everyone else. Noticed the deep sadness in her ocean blue eyes despite her physical beauty. Noticed how even the palace guards whose job was to protect her kept several feet away at all times, never coming close enough to accidentally brush against her. The negotiations went on for several hours, discussing tariffs and shipping routes and technology exchanges. It was important work, but also tedious and technical. During a scheduled break, when servants brought refreshments, Tom did something that surprised absolutely everyone in the room. He walked directly over to where Alera sat alone in her isolated chair and spoke to her, not from across the room like everyone else did, not shouting to maintain distance. He actually came close to her, within normal conversation distance, maybe 4 feet away, close enough to talk comfortably without raising his voice. The guards immediately tensed, their hands moving toward their weapons. Several officials made sound of alarm, but Tom maintained a respectful space, careful not to actually touch her while still being close enough for a real conversation. Princess Alera, Tom said with a warm, genuine smile on his face. I'm Tom from Earth. I've been reading about Velix culture in preparation for this trip, and I heard amazing things about your Festival of Light celebration. Would you mind telling me more about it? The research materials I found were pretty basic. Alera stared at him in complete shock, her eyes going wide. No one talked to her like this anymore, like she was a normal person worth having a conversation with instead of a dangerous object to avoid. Most people either ignored her entirely or spoke to her in formal, distant tones from across the room. You want to talk to me? She asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. About the festival? Of course I do, Tom replied, his smile never wavering. "You're clearly an interesting person with knowledge about your culture. Why wouldn't I want to talk to you and learn from you?" The other species present in the room kept their distance, watching this interaction nervously. Several looked ready to intervene if Tom got any closer. But Tom just stood there in his relaxed, friendly posture, not showing any fear, not treating Alara like a threat or a monster, just treating her like a normal person worth talking to. Alara felt something stir in her chest that she had not felt in years, something warm and unfamiliar that took her a moment to identify. Hope. She was feeling hope. The festival happens every year when our world's orbit brings us closest to our binary suns. Alara began hesitantly, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. We light thousands of lanterns and send them into the sky to honor our ancestors. Over the next several days, as the diplomatic negotiations continued, Tom made a deliberate point of talking to Alara every single day. Not just brief formal greetings, real conversations. He asked about her personal interests, what kind of books she liked to read, what music she enjoyed, what she thought about various galactic political situations. Normal, everyday conversation topics that no one else bothered to discuss with her. Slowly, Alara opened up to him. She told him about her life, about the 47 males who had died touching her over the years, about her crushing isolation despite being surrounded by people constantly, about how incredibly lonely she was. Tom listened to all of it with genuine attention and compassion. He did not interrupt or try to offer useless platitudes. He just listened and let her speak. "That sounds incredibly hard," Tom said simply when she finished explaining her situation. "I'm genuinely sorry you have to live like that. No one should have to be that isolated." Alara felt tears forming in her eyes. No one had ever just said they were sorry before. People always looked at her with fear, keeping their distance, or with pity, which somehow felt worse, or with morbid curiosity about the deadly princess. But Tom looked at her with simple human kindness, with empathy for another person's suffering. "Thank you," Alara whispered. "Just thank you for seeing me as a person." Over those few days of negotiations, Alara found herself genuinely looking forward to Tom's daily visits to talk with her, found herself smiling and even laughing at his stories about life on Earth, found herself feeling happy for the first time in years. She started to hope that maybe, just maybe, she could have a real friend. On the 5th day of the diplomatic visit, Alara and Tom were walking together through the palace gardens in the late afternoon. The gardens were beautiful, filled with flowering plants and trees from across the Velix star system. Carefully maintained paths wound between carefully sculpted hedges and bubbling fountains. They had fallen into an easy, comfortable friendship over the past few days. Tom still maintained a careful physical distance from her, never getting close enough to accidentally touch her. But they talked and laughed together like normal friends would. They discussed everything from philosophy to silly jokes. They shared stories about their respective worlds and cultures. Alara was happier than she had been in years, possibly happier than she had ever been in her entire adult life. Finally, after so long, she had found someone who did not treat her like a monster or a dangerous object to be feared and avoided. Tom treated her like a normal person, like someone worth knowing. It was the most wonderful feeling in the world. They were walking down a set of wide stone stairs that led from one level of the garden to another when it happened, the accident that would change everything. Alara's foot caught on the hem of her long flowing robe. The fabric tangled around her ankle. She stumbled forward suddenly, completely losing her balance. Her arms windmilled as she tried desperately to catch herself, but there was nothing to grab onto. She was going to fall hard down the remaining stairs, was going to tumble and crash and probably break bones. Tom reacted on pure protective instinct without thinking. He lunged forward fast and caught her before she could fall. His hands gripped her upper arms firmly to steady her and keep her upright. His fingers wrapped around her arms to hold her secure. Direct skin-to-skin contact. His bare human hands on her bare Velix arms where her sleeves had pulled back and ridden up during her stumble. Everyone else in the garden gasped simultaneously. A collective sharp intake of breath from guards, servants, and other palace staff who had been nearby. Guards immediately started rushing forward from their positions, though they had no idea what they could actually do to help. The damage was already done. The contact had already been made. Alera's ocean blue eyes went impossibly wide with absolute horror as she realized what had just happened. She pulled away from Tom's grip immediately, stumbling backwards several steps. Tears were already forming in her eyes and beginning to stream down her silvery cheeks. "No, no, no, no!" she cried out desperately, her voice breaking with anguish. "Tom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I just tripped. I'm so sorry." She knew exactly what was about to happen next, had witnessed it 47 times before over the years. The pattern never varied, never failed. The convulsions would start any second now. Tom's body would begin shaking violently as the toxin attacked his nervous system. Then would come the paralysis as his muscles stopped responding to signals from his brain. Then he would stop breathing as his lungs forgot how to function. Then death within minutes. Tom would die right here in the garden. Her friend would die. The first real friend she had made in over a decade, because she had been clumsy and tripped on her own robe like a fool. Alera waited for it to start, watched Tom's face with horror, waiting to see the first signs of the toxin taking effect. But Tom just stood there, looking at her with genuine concern written all over his human face, standing perfectly steady and fine, no convulsions shaking his body, no gasping desperately for air, no collapsing to ground, no signs of distress whatsoever. Nothing was happening to him. "Are you okay?" Tom asked, his voice filled with real worry. He took a small step toward her. "You almost fell pretty hard down those stairs. Did you hurt your ankle?" Alera stared at him in complete and utter shock. Her mouth hung open. Her tears stopped flowing from pure surprise. The guards who had been rushing forward stopped in their tracks and stared. Other people in the garden stood, completely frozen like statues. Everyone was looking at Tom with expressions of disbelief. This was impossible. Absolutely impossible by all known science and medicine. Humans should not be immune to Velix toxin. No species in the entire known galaxy was immune to it. 47 males from different species had died from touching Alera. Every single medical test and study confirmed that the toxin was universally lethal. But Tom was standing there, looking completely fine, acting like nothing unusual had happened. "How?" Alera whispered, her voice barely audible. She could not form complete sentences. "How are you not dead? You touch my skin. You should be dying right now. You should be convulsing. Why are you not dying?" Tom looked confused by the question. He glanced down at his hands, then back up at Alera's shocked face. "What? Oh, you mean the toxin thing." He said it so casually, like it was a minor detail. "Am I supposed to feel something? Because I feel completely normal. Maybe a little adrenaline from catching you, but that's it." He held up his hands and examined them curiously. "Should there be a rash or something? My skin looks fine to me." One of the guards finally found his voice. "You touched the princess's bare skin," the guard said slowly, like he was explaining something to a child. "You should be experiencing severe convulsions by now. You should be dying." Tom's eyebrows raised in surprise. "Oh, well, I'm definitely not dying. I feel fine, perfectly healthy." He looked at Alera with concern again. "Are you sure you're okay? You look really pale." "Well, paler than usual, I guess. Do you need to sit down?" Alera could not respond, could not think, could not process what she was witnessing. For the first time in her life, someone had touched her skin and survived. Within less than an hour after the incident in the garden, Tom found himself surrounded by medical teams in the palace's advanced medical facility. Doctors from 3 completely different species were examining him frantically, all of them moving with urgent purpose. They ran every test they could possibly think of. Blood samples were taken and analyzed. Brain scans were performed. His heart rate and breathing were monitored continuously. They examined his skin under powerful microscopes, looking for cellular damage. They tested his reflexes and cognitive function. They measured his body temperature and blood pressure every few minutes. The lead physician, a Velix doctor named Crane who had studied toxicology for over 40 years, reviewed all the test results with growing disbelief written across his face. The results were absolutely clear and undeniable. Tom had definitely been exposed to a lethal dose of Velix toxin. His skin had absorbed it directly through physical contact with Princess Alera's bare arms. Chemical analysis of his skin cells showed traces of the toxin still present. By every known standard of medical science across multiple species, Tom should be dead, should have died within 10 minutes of exposure. But human biology, it turned out, was fundamentally different than anyone in the galactic medical community had realized or understood. Dr. Crane pulled up comparative biological data on his display screen and showed it to his colleagues. The information was stunning. Humans had evolved on what galactic scientists classified as a Class 12 death world. Earth was an incredibly dangerous planet filled with threats that would terrify most spacefaring species. Venomous creatures like snakes, spiders, and scorpions whose bites could kill. Toxic plants that produce poisons as defense mechanisms. Dangerous bacteria and viruses that attack from within. Parasites that invaded the body. Predators with claws and teeth. Humanity had survived and thrived on this nightmare world by developing truly incredible resistance to toxins and poisons. Their immune systems were vastly more robust than other species. Their livers were remarkably efficient at filtering and neutralizing dangerous chemicals. Their bodies had redundant systems and backup mechanisms that kicked in when primary systems failed. What would kill other species in mere minutes, humans could tolerate for hours or even survive completely. The test results showed exactly what had happened to Tom's body when exposed to the Velix toxin. His skin had absorbed the deadly chemical just like it would have with any other species. But then his incredibly efficient liver had immediately begun processing it, breaking down the complex molecules into harmless components. His enhanced immune system had mobilized to attack any toxic molecules that entered his bloodstream. His body had neutralized the lethal dose so quickly and efficiently that Tom had not even noticed any symptoms at all. Not even mild discomfort. Nothing. This is extraordinary, Dr. Crane said, shaking his head in amazement. In all my years studying toxicology across dozens of species, I have never seen anything like human biology. They are walking toxin processing machines. When the medical team finished their examination and compiled their final report, Dr. Crane personally went to find Princess Alera to explain the results. He found her sitting in a private room, still looking shell-shocked from what had happened in the garden. "Princess," Dr. Crane said gently, sitting down across from her, "I have the medical analysis results regarding Ambassador Tom's exposure to your toxin." Alera looked up at him with red, puffy eyes from crying. "He's really not dying?" she asked in a small, hopeful voice. "He is not dying," Dr. Crane confirmed. "In fact, he is in perfect health. The human body possesses remarkable resistance to toxins that we never knew existed. Your toxin, which is lethal to every other species we have encountered, is harmless to humans. Completely harmless." He pulled up the data on a portable screen and showed it to her. "Look at these liver enzyme readings. Look at how efficiently his body neutralized the toxin. It is truly remarkable." Alera stared at the medical data, but she could not fully process what she was seeing. The numbers and charts meant nothing to her overwhelmed mind. Only one fact mattered. For the first time in her entire adult life, she was not dangerous to someone. She could touch someone without killing them, could make physical contact without causing death, could be touched by another living being. The full weight of this realization crashed down on her all at once. 10 years of isolation, 10 years of wearing gloves and keeping distance, 10 years of being untouchable, 10 years of crushing loneliness. And now, suddenly, impossibly, there was someone who could safely touch her. Alera broke down crying. Not quiet tears this time, but deep, racking sobs that shook her entire body. Years and years of suppressed pain and loneliness came pouring out all at once. She cried for the 47 who had died, cried for the life she had lost, cried for all the human contact she had been denied. But she also cried with relief, with joy, with overwhelming emotion that she could not even name. Dr. Crane quietly left the room to give her privacy. A few minutes later, Tom appeared in the doorway. The medical team had finally released him after confirming for the 5th time that he was perfectly healthy. "Hey," Tom said softly. They told me you were in here. Are you okay?" Alara looked up at him with tears still streaming down her face. She tried to speak, but could not form words. Tom, not fully understanding everything she was feeling, but knowing instinctively that she needed comfort, did something that no one had done for Alara in over 10 years. He walked over to her and pulled her into a real, genuine embrace. No gloves between them, no protective barriers, no layers of fabric, just direct human contact. His arms wrapped around her shoulders, her silvery skin pressed against his. Alara completely fell apart in his arms. She clung to him desperately and cried into his shoulder, her whole body shaking with the force of her sobs. 10 years of pain and isolation came pouring out. Tom just held her firmly and securely. Let her cry. Let her release everything she had been holding inside for so long. He gently stroked her hair and made quiet, soothing sounds. "It's okay," Tom said softly. "I've got you. You're not alone anymore." Alara cried until she had no tears left, cried until she was exhausted. And through it all, Tom never let go, just held her and gave her the one thing she had been denied for a decade: human contact, connection, touch, the simple, basic thing that every living being needed, and that had been stolen from her by her own biology. Until now. Until Tom. Over the following weeks after that life-changing discovery in the palace gardens, more humans began arriving on the Velix homeworld. Scientists, diplomats, researchers, and curious visitors all made the journey to witness this remarkable discovery firsthand. Every single test and examination confirmed exactly the same incredible finding. Humans could safely touch Princess Alara without any danger whatsoever. The toxin that killed every other species in the galaxy was completely harmless to humans. Every human who volunteered for testing showed the same remarkable resistance. For the first time in Alara's entire life, since her toxin had fully developed, she was not isolated anymore. She could have real, genuine friends who could actually touch her, could shake hands during introductions without fear of killing anyone, could hug people when they greeted her or said goodbye, could pat someone on the shoulder, could hold someone's hand. All the simple, basic physical contact that other people took completely for granted their whole lives, Alara could finally experience. It was overwhelming in the most wonderful possible way. She cried happy tears almost every day during those first few weeks as she adjusted to this new reality. But despite having multiple humans on the planet, now who could safely interact with her, Alara found herself spending the vast majority of her time with Tom specifically. They had started as friends born from an accidental touch in a garden. But as the weeks slowly turned into months, something much deeper began to develop between them. Something neither of them had been looking for, but both welcomed when it appeared. They talked together for hours every single day about everything imaginable: philosophy and politics, books and music, dreams and fears. They walked through the palace gardens together in comfortable silence or animated conversation. They shared meals, sitting across from each other and talking while they ate. They watched the binary sun set together from the palace balcony. Tom held her hand while they walked. Something that was completely impossible for anyone else in the galaxy, but felt perfectly natural for him. He would reach over and take her hand in his like it was the most normal thing in the world, and Alara's heart would swell with joy every single time. Alara realized slowly that she was falling in love. Really, truly falling in love. Not just feeling grateful to Tom for being able to touch her, though she was grateful, but genuine romantic love for who he was as a person. She loved his endless kindness and compassion for others. She loved his quick sense of humor that made her laugh until her sides hurt. She loved the way he saw her as a person first and a princess second. The way he treated her like she was normal and valuable, not cursed or dangerous. Tom was falling in love too, though it took him slightly longer to recognize and admit it to himself. He fell in love with Alara's sharp intelligence and the thoughtful way she analyzed complex problems. He fell in love with her inner strength that had survived 10 years of crushing isolation without becoming bitter or cruel. He fell in love with the way she looked at the world with wonder and joy after so many years of being denied so much. He fell in love with her laugh, with her smile, with the way she unconsciously reached for his hand when she was thinking. 6 months after that first accidental touch on the garden stairs, Tom made a decision that felt both terrifying and absolutely right. He asked Alara to marry him. He did it simply, without elaborate ceremony. Just the two of them walking in the gardens at sunset. He got down on one knee, pulled out a ring he had specially made, and asked if she would spend her life with him. Alara said yes before he even finished asking the question. Said yes through happy tears streaming down her silvery face. Said yes and threw her arms around him and held him tight. The wedding was held 3 months later in the palace gardens, in the exact spot where they had first touched by accident. It seemed fitting to celebrate their love in the place where everything had changed. Representatives from over 100 different worlds attended the ceremony. The guest list included royalty, diplomats, scientists, and friends from across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to witness this historic union between a human and a Velix princess. The ceremony followed traditional Velix customs, which Tom had studied carefully. He wanted to honor Alara's culture and heritage. When the ceremony reached the moment for the bride and groom to join hands as a symbol of their union, the entire crowd fell silent with anticipation. Alara slowly and deliberately removed her long gloves. She had worn them to the ceremony out of habit and tradition, but now she pulled them off and set them aside. The crowd gasped collectively. Even though everyone present knew intellectually that humans were immune to her toxin, seeing the deadly princess bare her skin was still shocking. Still carried the weight of 47 deaths. Tom stood there calmly, waiting with an encouraging smile on his face. Alara extended her bare hands toward him, trembling slightly with emotion. Tom took her hands in his without any hesitation whatsoever. His warm human fingers intertwined with hers, their palms pressed together. Alara looked down at their joined hands and smiled through tears that were running down her cheeks. "I never thought I would feel this," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Feel what?" Tom asked gently, squeezing her hand softly. Connected, truly connected to someone, to anyone. Her voice broke. "I thought I would live my whole life alone, untouchable, and now—" She could not finish the sentence, did not need to. Tom understood completely. He pulled her close and kissed her deeply, the first real romantic kiss of Alara's entire life. She had never been kissed before, because anyone who got close enough to kiss her would die. But Tom kissed her freely, safely, lovingly. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. The galaxy learned several important lessons that day at the wedding. They learned that humans could survive things that killed other species, could tolerate deadly toxins and poisons that no one else could handle, could touch the untouchable and live. Earth, the death world that had seemed so dangerous and primitive, had produced a species with remarkable abilities that no one had appreciated. But Alara learned something even more important and personal than any scientific discovery. She learned that she was not cursed, had never been cursed despite what everyone had said for years. She had just been waiting, though she had not known it, for the right person to come along. Someone who could see past the danger and the warnings of the lonely, wonderful woman underneath. Someone who would talk to her like a person and treat her with kindness. Someone whose biology could withstand what killed everyone else. Someone who had ignored all the warnings and touched her anyway. Someone like Tom. And now she would spend the rest of her life holding his hand, something she had thought would be forever impossible. She was the luckiest person in the galaxy. The end.